Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming and welcome. My name is Carol Schaffner-Hammer. I'm Vice Dean for Research at Teachers College, and we're very happy to have you here at our first Teachers College Columbia Barnard College collaboration event, which we hope this will be the first of many to come. And so we have many speakers, but we're trying to keep things moving, so it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jeanette Wing, who's the Executive Vice President for Research at Columbia. Jeanette.
So thank you very much. I'm quite impressed by the size of this crowd. So bravo to the organizers and bravo to all of you for coming. So this seems a little high for me. So first of all, good afternoon and thank you for coming. It's wonderful to be here and to welcome you to this unusual event. I am Jeanette Wing, Executive Vice President for Research and Professor of Computer Science here at Columbia. I just started the EVPR role about a year ago, and one of the first things I did was to come up with a slogan for my priorities, which I will share with you. Power in partnerships, power in diversity, and power for impact. And with the priority of power in partnerships in mind, I am delighted to co-host this event with President Tom Bailey of Teachers College and Provost Linda Bell of Barnard, and in partnership with Dennis Mitchell, the Executive Vice President for University Life and Senior Vice Provost for Faculty Advancement. Tom and Linda will offer their welcoming remarks, and Dennis will close the event later today. With respect to the priority of power for impact in mind, our goal is to explore how we can work together to pursue compelling research whose impact is more immediately and more directly beneficial to our economy, to society, and to humanity. And finally, with the priority of power and diversity, we need also to discuss how we pursue all these activities within a deeper framework of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So after Tom and Linda have a chance to welcome you, we will have a series of lightning talks to give you a glimpse, just a glimpse, of the breadth of the research and talent in our neighbors north of 120th, Teachers College, and I used to look at Teachers College from my office at Northwest Corner, and our neighbors west of Broadway, and I used to live at 610, 116, looking at Barnard every evening, and to hear about all the various proposals on which we've collaborated. The work you will hear about is just a sampling of our partners' research, our talent, our joint efforts, and each talk is just a taste of the research question and outcomes achieved. So we can only do a lot of little things, and it's very frustrating, but hopefully you'll be impressed by the breadth and diversity of research. We plan the agenda to leave a lot of time for discussion and networking, so that's really one of the main purposes of this event. And I know people have been sending emails saying, I'll see you at that event, it sounds really interesting, so it's already starting the networking. And I encourage you to spend time with people at their posters, meet new potential collaborators, and be inspired to pursue new research directions. So thank you very much, and now I pass the microphone to Tom.
Thank you, Jeanette. I'm going to have to use those three priorities, so those are wonderful. So I also want to thank Carol and Victoria for organizing this and anyone else who organized it. I mean, I think it's great for us to get together. I hope this is not only the beginning of many events like this, but also a kind of more continuous and organic relationship that we can have. And by the way, from my office, I can see Columbia and I can see Barnard, so I'm with you. So Teachers College was founded on the idea that equity may only be achieved when everyone has access to quality education. and not just education alone. Since our founding, we have been committed to strengthening, to taking a holistic view, the education, health, and psychology of individuals and society. We stand at the cutting edge of the question, how can education, in its broadest sense, be used to address our most pressing challenges? Through research, innovation, and community partnerships, TC has been at the forefront of critical needs and fields of inquiry. Areas such as neuroscience and education, data science, and the prevention of gun violence. Looking at issues that matter, committing resources, and creating solutions. This is work that is worth doing together, and we can deepen our impact by forming strong working relationships with our colleagues at Columbia and Barnard. We've come together today to showcase a range of what we do at Teachers College and the extensive collaborative fields that we cover. There's research that improves the functional abilities and quality of life for individuals with neurological diseases and disorders, that dismantles barriers to seeking mental health support among ethnic minorities and immigrant origin youth and families, that designs and investigates student learning and project-based science environments, and so much more. Federal funders include NSF, NIH, the U.S. Department of Education, the Department of Homeland Security, the CDC, the National Endowment for the Humanities, to name just a few. As an economist and the director of the Community College Research Center at TC for 25 years, I've seen the influence of research. Professionally, I'm sure that we all share how fulfilling it can be to use evidence-based research findings to improve policy and practice in ways that benefit society. I totally understand why we are here together. You will hear from some of our TC colleagues in just a few minutes, and I hope that you will be as enthusiastic as I am in thinking about opportunities for collaboration and ways to jumpstart new initiatives. And I encourage you to consider reaching out and engaging in dialogue with one another early in the grant-making and research processes. That way, we can all have a broader impact on the communities that we are working to support. And now it is my honor and pleasure to turn things over to Linda Bell, Provost and Dean of the faculty at Barnard. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I will promise not to repeat, so I'll just add a few words and then we'll get on with the main show, shall we say. So first of all, Jeanette, thank you. Where are you, Jeanette? Thank you for your idea, for your energy, for your leadership around collaboration. So many of our faculty are connected across the 3 schools represented here in ways that shape careers, in ways that create solutions, in ways that forge things forward. We live as academics often, at our computer screens or in our desks or in archives, too often in our mind, perhaps, and opportunities to collaborate, create a different way of mind thinking. There's lots of literature on that, and create different kinds of opportunities that cross disciplines and cross borders and barriers. And if you think about the world in which we operate in research, it's also the case that scientific communities are increasingly releasing papers sooner, releasing data sooner, et cetera, with the goal of sharing information as soon as possible. So this is just a wonderful venue to be part of and a great idea. And I look forward to see all the collaborations that lie ahead through it. So I just want to congratulate from Barnard my 2 junior colleagues, faculty members who will be presenting today. Professor Alex White, who's an assistant professor of neuroscience, and Professor Chandler Miranda, who's a term assistant professor of urban studies and education. We're looking forward to hosting this event on Barnard's campus in the spring and in partnering in the future. to showcase the work that comes out of these kinds of junior faculty and other collaborations in our community. So I also on my team would like to extend thanks and really gratitude to the hard work of those who have been involved from the grassroots. Jennifer Rosales, who's the Vice President for Inclusion and Engagement, Learning, and also our Chief Diversity Officer. Deborah Minkoff, who's a Professor of Sociology and the Dean for Faculty Diversity and Development this year. And Reshmi Mukherjee, who's the Professor of Physics and Astronomy and Vice Provost for Research. So thank you all to the three of you for pushing this forward on our end. And with that, I think we'll turn it over to the lightning rounds. So pleasure being here today.
Okay, 3-minute talks. Ready? You got the, okay. I'm Peter Coleman. I'm from Teachers College. I'm a psychology professor there and at the Climate School. And I study peaceful societies. You may wonder why. Because for 30 years, the United Nations, the international community, have been trying to pivot from being just crisis management oriented to fulfill their mandate to sustain peace. But peaceful societies are rarely studied as such, right? Because why bother? When they are studied, we study just pieces, aspects of them, policy correlates to peace. So our approaches to sustaining peace and our metrics are flawed and biased and problematic. So this group has been working for about 10 years to take peaceful societies seriously. If you go to our website, you'll see that there's a map, a world map of many of the peaceful societies that exist today that you may not be aware of, and what we call the peace systems. Our approach is outlined there. And there are things like this, which is a causal loop diagram mapping of the empirical science related to sustaining peace, and a mathematical model that takes that map and allows you to interact with it as a game in order to see how it operates as a system. But what I want to talk about in my remaining moments is a collaborative project that we've done where we're applying AI and data science methods to understand and track peace speech. So the UN and other groups use data science methods to predict violence, and they will track language from newspapers and from Twitter in order to understand spikes in violence, but we don't know how to track peaceful societies and how to predict when they change, when they move toward and away from peace. So what is the language of peace? This is a collaboration between the Morton Deutsch Center, the Advanced Consortium, which is at the Climate School, and the Data Science Institute. We've been working on this for several years now. There's a variety of students and colleagues involved in this. And basically what we've done is use the existing peace indices, the top 5 indices, to rank the top and bottom in terms of peace around the world. And then we scrape data from them. We actually got access to 900 million articles through LexisNexis over the past 10 years, and it allows us to learn. So we apply machine learning and natural language processing to understand, are there linguistic differences in news accounts, news reporting from high peace and low peace societies? And we have found them. And they allow us to then classify. You can take an article from any of these newspapers and within 95% be able to classify what type of society it comes from. It's not the kind of content that you would think. These are the lexicons, an example of the lexicons that emerge. Peaceful society language tends to be looser, more creative and playful. Conflict societies are about order and state, right? And bureaucracy usually. But this language allows us to predict and rank societies accordingly. So it's giving us insight into some of the linguistic markers of peace and peaceful societies, allows us to develop new measures for tracking and predicting peacefulness, and get insight into reporting and how reporting can be a driver of peace or conflict. That's it, I'm done. Alex.
All right, tough act to follow, but the data science piece continues. So hello everybody, and good afternoon. I'm Alex Bowers. I'm a professor of education leadership at Teachers College, and In my work, I try to help school leaders, principals, superintendents use data more effectively in their schools on both sides of the equation, both in their work every day with teachers, but also on the other side with the data systems and the kinds of data warehouses and all the different kinds of data that we collect in schools today. So I do that in a few different ways. First, as you can see on my one single slide for my 3-minute talk, sponsored by the National Science Foundation, we've held these National Science Foundation Education Data Collaborative Workshops, where we bring together teachers, administrators, superintendents with data scientists and vendors who create these dashboards and analytic predictor systems, bring them together such as at, these are pictures from an event right before the pandemic at Teachers College's Learning Theater, in which we bring these groups together so that the vendors and the data scientists and the people who make these predictive algorithms can help hear what the teachers want, need, and where they want these systems to go. And in this work, I call this educational leadership data analytics, where we bring together educational leadership, evidence-based improvement cycles, and data science and data analytics, bringing together the data users, the teachers and administrators, with the data analysts, the data scientists, and the dashboard vendors, and the people who make the warehouses. But throughout all this work, we need to be very cautious of the kinds of things that I and the OECD have talked about in a recently sponsored report, where I call it the 4 A's of algorithms in education. That these predictive systems need to be accurate, accessible, actionable, and accountable. Accurate in that the predictions need to actually be shown to be accurate against benchmarks. Accessible, easy to understand, open to investigation, and open in public so that all of the algorithms can be audited for bias. And actionable, so that predictors can be used to take action, so that we're using predictors that students, teachers, and communities actually have control over. And then finally, accountable. So regularly checked for bias, audited and inspected in collaboration with the communities for which they're predicting. So thank you so much.
Hey everyone, I'm Nathan Holbert. I'm an associate professor at Teachers College in the Department of Mathematics, Science, and Technology. And in my research, I design and study playful learning environments that enable young people to make stuff that they care about and to do things about issues and challenges in their world that they care about. I'm going to talk briefly about the Make With Data project. This project was in collaboration with my colleague Cassie Zhu from the Columbia Climate School, and it was funded by the National Science Foundation's iTest program. The goal of this research was to examine how framing data science as a tool for addressing issues important to young people in their local communities might impact who participates in STEM professions and STEM domains. In this project, we designed a 2-year after-school club that invited high school students and teachers throughout New York City to use data to address challenges that matter to their local communities. And a key innovation for this project was that we were focusing on flattening the hierarchy between the teachers and students. So rather than just give students projects that we sort of pre-made for them, we invited the teachers and students to collaborate equally on identifying what the projects might be, finding the data, analyzing the data, and also in disseminating the results. The issues that the students and teachers explored range across a variety of topics, including things like the mental health of high school students, drug use among teens, inequitable policing, and even things like road quality. And together, the teachers and students worked with professional data scientists to find open source data that was related to the topics that they were interested in investigating. Working with those data scientists, the teachers and the students looked at the open source data and they used professional grade tools to try to make sense out of what these problems actually were. And not surprisingly, the questions that they thought they were investigating started to change. So for example, a question about the mental health of high school students started to transform into a question of accessibility. So what is the availability of mental health facilities across the city? And how accessible are those? You know, is there public transportation between the schools and the various mental health facilities that would allow students to get to those spaces safely? Teams were then able to present their findings to policymakers throughout New York City, as well as at the National Science Foundation's iTest Summit, and at the FabLearn Conference, which is a conference we host annually at Teachers College around maker and computer science education. The students and teachers then also went back to their schools and started their own Make With Data clubs, kind of taking the practices that we have been exploring and adapting them to address the actual needs of their local school communities. So that this project could exist beyond the funding years of that we had. So this was a project that I think is a nice example, as Tom said earlier, about how we can sort of take the expertise of these various institutions and bring them together to solve actual challenges that we face in our city. And we're continuing this work with a particular interest in starting to integrate data journalism into the practices that the young people are learning. So if you're interested in this work, please send me an email or find me or my colleague Cassie with the remainder of the session.
Hi everyone, I'm Yolanda Seeley Ruiz, Associate Professor, English Education at TC. Let's see, first let me situate myself before the clock starts in terms of how I advance these slides. Here we go. So, I am here to talk about racial literacy. Fundamentally, my question is, what happens in education when teachers are given the opportunity to develop their racial literacy development with a specific focus on what I call archaeology of self, looking at who they are, what their fundamental beliefs are that play out in the classroom. This here is my model of racial literacy development. These are the 6 components, and each of these components have very organically developed into professional learning experiences that I have been engaged in districts all over the country with supervisors, with teachers, with superintendents. They're each about 3 to 4 hours long in length. So in terms of racial literacy, for the past 14 years, I have been running what's called a racial literacy project. I want to shout out, if she's in the room, Dr. Janice Robinson of the Diversity Office, who has been funding the racial literacy, starting out as roundtables and developed into a project. Of course, I've written about this through books and articles, and recently a policy statement for the National Council of Teachers of English. I have created and delivered a TED Talk, and my colleague and I, alum for TC, Dr. Angela Costa, we have given what's called Archaeology of Self institutes for at least 3,000 people across the country since COVID. You won't be able to fully understand this because it's so tiny, but pay attention to the colors. And these colors are the collaborations that I have begun or seek to begin with educational organizations, with media, and specifically, I have met with the State Chancellor of New York. My goal is for all teachers or teacher candidates involved in the Teacher Opportunity Course, specifically, there are 17 colleges and universities in New York State. If they receive this funding, that they must take a racial literacy course, and the capstone course is Archaeology of Self. That is the goal. One of my major collaborators is, I believe here in the room, Matthew Camp. And Matthew and I have been talking about thinking through as part of, let me go back for a moment and pay attention to, I am a mid-career fellows scholar, the New York City Department of Ed and the New York State Education Department, to pull together a white paper to present it, to talk about the benefits of racial literacy development, and specifically archaeology of self. And Matthew Camp is my collaborator helping me do that. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. My name's Karen Block, and I'm a professor in the Department of Organization and Leadership at TC. And the work that we do is about understanding diversity dynamics in organizations. And what we mean by diversity dynamics are when the same situation is not experienced in the same way depending on the meaning of stereotypes in your social identity group. So since a picture can speak louder than words, here's a diversity dynamic. Same situation, yes, negative feedback. Different situation, yes, she's representing all girls. So we study this in context. This is my complex slide, but this is meant to say that diversity dynamics don't happen in a vacuum. So in organizations, when we see a changing workforce and no change in leadership, we inquire about diversity dynamics that might be at play. And this collaborative work has happened in terms of interventions, but let me start, with barriers. This was collaborative work on looking at gender differences in recommendation letters for postdocs. And we found through a content analysis of letters in collaboration with Lamont Doherty Earth Institute that women were half as likely to receive excellent as compared to good letters than men. We've also collaborated with Columbia Business School, looking at what can we do about this, and looking at the gender gap that exists in quantitative courses for the MBA, and found that a self-affirmation intervention at orientation was able to eliminate that gender difference, which shocked all of us after the first semester. And then we also did a collaboration, which was both with Columbia and Barnard, looking at women in STEM and how it is that they navigate diversity dynamics and those types of barriers. And this research was a qualitative study and was sponsored by the Advance program. So I probably finished in under 2 minutes because I was really speeding, but that's what I'm going to say. And if any of you would be interested in thinking about diversity dynamics in your own organizations or your aspects of the university, we would love to speak with you. Thank you.
Hi, it's very nice to be here. My name is Lori Quinn. I am a professor of movement sciences and kinesiology at Teachers College. In my lab, we study movement-based assessments and interventions for individuals with neurodegenerative diseases, including Parkinson's disease. Today, I'm going to share some work that I have done alongside Dr. Harold Shaw from Columbia University and Miss Anita Parker from St. Luke's AME Church on addressing racial disparities in access to healthcare and research in our local community. Oh no. There we go. Okay. I've been fortunate to work with a group of multidisciplinary researchers and community experts to try to understand why racial disparities exist in both access to healthcare and as well as engagement in research, and how we can help to address these. Using a community-based participatory research approach, we conducted focus groups to identify barriers and facilitators to care-seeking behaviors for individuals with Parkinson's disease. This work has led to the development of targeted, culturally tailored interventions to improve engagement in timely clinical care and research participation. There are two key components to the work that we have done: building trust within the community and using a faith-based approach for engagement. Building trust required consistent and ongoing presence in the community and using empowering, culturally sensitive messaging while acknowledging the discrimination and stigma that has led to these disparities. Using a faith-based approach, we engaged directly with local churches and community leaders and incorporated storytelling and testimony from community members. These are some of the research activities that we have undergone, which include a literature review, 2 focus groups in the Black and Brown community, an educational series which is ongoing, community health fairs that we hold annually, a PD Movers storybook, and several upcoming publications. And I'd like to highlight 2 outputs from this work. The first is this graphic, which was informed by our literature review and confirmed and revised through focus group analysis. This demonstrates the multitude of individual, community, provider, and system-level problems, including mistrust, biases, and low health literacy that have contributed to the disparities in healthcare outcomes. And these include increased disease severity in people with Parkinson's disease who are Black. And finally, the second output is a storybook that we created in collaboration with members of the Black community who have Parkinson's disease. Individuals shared their personal journeys with Parkinson's disease as a means to provide education about the signs and symptoms of Parkinson's and empowering stories about how medication, lifestyle interventions, and faith can be used to address the many aspects of Parkinson's disease and decrease these disparities. And I'd like to acknowledge my team, which includes members from the Barnard community as well as the Columbia community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lalitha Vasudevan. As it says here, I'm the Professor of Technology and Education in the Mathematics, Science, and Technology Department, and I'm also the Vice Dean for Digital Innovation at Teachers College. I'm here presenting on behalf of my colleague, Sonali Rajan, and both of us are involved in an important effort here at Columbia to really address the issue of gun violence. All of the slides are put together by Sonali, so please give her your kudos. What we'd like to say is a little bit about SURGE, if you haven't heard about it already. SURGE stands for the Scientific Union for the Reduction of Gun Violence. The E is just for extra energy. But it is energy that's needed to do this kind of work that is really at the core of some of the challenges presented in addressing the well-being of young people and communities around the nation. It's a university-wide initiative that includes over 36 faculty, many of whom are in the room today. And it represents over 18 disciplines in 7 Columbia University schools and colleges. So in terms of being a space where some of the wonderful work that you've been hearing can take place, where does interdisciplinarity live? You need a structure for it, and that's what SURGE attempts to provide. A primary mission of SURGE is to generate new science in pursuit of meaningful solutions to the persistence, unfortunately, of gun violence in our nation. This is an issue that impacts thousands of individuals from across the life course and communities all around our nation. And it's not just limited to certain pockets. I appreciated Peter's peaceful nations, peaceful communities, because it would be wonderful to find more of that free from gun violence. This work is being undertaken in an interdisciplinary way, and that means that faculty and students are engaged in a variety of forms of interdisciplinary research and multidisciplinary research. And here you see highlighted some of the topics that SURGE members are pursuing. Research in firearms suicides, school shootings, police violence, mass shootings, community gun violence, and firearm policy. This work, as you can see from some of the samples of some of the papers that have been produced, is being taken up by a variety of outlets as well. I'm going to show you a few more headlines here. And what we see is that this work is addressing the impact of gun violence across the lifespan. This work has been funded by multiple funding sources, and here are 2 that are being headed by Charlie Brannis at Mailman Public Health and Sonali Rajan at Teachers College. This work is continuing to attract more funding, and with the release of additional federal funding for gun violence research, we hope to see more of this coming our way. But more importantly, or as importantly, not only are SURGE members doing research, but they are helping to shape the public discourse. And so many of the SURGE members have been quoted in or have been producing artifacts for various outlets. And finally, a great deal of work is being done in translating this work for public audiences. There's a podcast you can check out. There's writing for various venues. And really, finally, the work is trying to play out in the form of training for graduate students and additional faculty. I think we hope, looking forward, that you come and partner with us. You can learn more at the Columbia SURGE website, and I'm happy to talk more about it afterward.
Hi everyone, I'm Chandler Patton Miranda. I'm a term assistant professor in the Education and Urban Studies Department at Barnard. Let me see if I can get this to, okay. Today I'll be talking about the concept of sanctuary as it relates to the politics of immigrant education. Today, immigration has changed the demographics of the US significantly. Today, 45 million immigrants are in the United States. It's 22% of the population in New York, and it's 26% of children under 18 are either immigrants themselves or immigrant origin youth. I want to take you back for a moment to 2016 and the months and years after the presidential election. This was a moment of heightened anti-immigrant rhetoric and exclusionary federal policies. In response to the administration and these policies, cities and schools across the country began to declare themselves sanctuaries. This was interesting to me as a researcher because these policies were mostly about non-cooperation, In other words, the goal was to keep ICE out of schools. And so I began to wonder if this was a limit of sanctuary. I also want to bring you into the current moment. This was a picture in the Times a few weeks ago. And to remind you that 5,000 new migrant children have enrolled in New York City schools just this year, many in this neighborhood. And so I think the concept of sanctuary is both timely and an important one to be discussing in terms of its history, its legality, in policy, and in practice. Today, I'm going to focus on two ways sanctuary played out in a study I did, an ethnographic study of a school during this time. And I want to talk about sanctuary both as non-cooperation, but sanctuary also as innovation and response to exclusion. Sanctuary was a distant concept to both me as a researcher, the educators that I study in the school when this bulletin board was up, and Donald Trump's face kept disappearing and ending up in the boys' bathroom. No one at this school believed he could be elected. Before the election, teachers were interested in teaching immigration to students new to the country about their civic duty and to teach it in a fair and balanced way. But after the election, they kept talking about checks and balances as a safety mechanism for addressing immigrant student needs. But after the Muslim ban, that stopped, and they really turned towards teaching constitutional rights. And this was really in line with the policies that were happening largely in the socio-political environment about non-cooperation and non-compliance. But as I spent more time in the school, I realized that sanctuary can mean lots of other things as well. It can mean innovative responses to exclusionary practices. And this was something that is historic in the sanctuary movements and can be seen more globally. In this school, I eventually came to understand sanctuary as a grounding philosophy of schooling that is innovative in response to exclusionary policies. And I observed these in 5 areas: the deprioritization of English learning, the affirmation of culture and language in the curriculum, the rethinking of approaches and compliance with assessment policy, and then the forging of alliances with outside organizations and accompaniment with families. And I'd be happy to talk about those findings more with you in the after party.
A few more pictures. All right, hey everyone. My name's Alex White. This has been great hearing about all this cool research going on. I'm very glad to have a chance to add my bit to it. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Neuroscience and Behavior at Barnard. And there I direct the Barnard Vision Lab, where much of our research is focused on how the brain recognizes written words. So consider a key difference between comprehending spoken language and comprehending written language. As you listen to me speak right now, each word is delivered one at a time, each syllable one at a time. But you can read this. As you read this passage, all the words and their component letters are presented all at once. A major question for us is, how much information can you process from written text at each glance? You clearly couldn't comprehend both of those sentences all at once. And I think that's an important question because we need to know how even skilled readers deal with the capacity limits they have for processing text. That determines how they move their attention and their eyes as they're trying to funnel all these little black shapes through their eyes, through the visual parts of the brain, into the language parts of the brain. So in some studies, we recruit volunteers who read and we record their eye movements with a high-resolution eye tracker. Another basic question we're investigating is it even possible to recognize just 2 words simultaneously? So I'll let you try it. Fixate your gaze on the little plus at the center of that rectangle, and next I'm going to flash 2 random words, one on the left and one on the right, and keep your eyes still and try to recognize both of them. It may have been difficult. In fact, it's almost impossible, I have argued, to recognize 2 words simultaneously. If you're given the chance to focus your attention on just one of those words, you can do it quite well. But as soon as we ask people to divide their attention and recognize both, seems like they can't. They can get one of them, but they have no idea what the other one was, suggesting that there's a really profound limit on how much your brain can do at one moment in time. We are recently finding some cases for at least some people can recognize multiple words in parallel, and we're interested in understanding those individual differences and how they relate to reading ability. We also do functional magnetic resonance imaging studies where we put people in an MRI scanner while they read. And we're particularly interested in this one little bit of brain called the visual word form area in the left ventral temporal cortex that becomes specialized for reading as a child learns to read. And our questions are, what exactly is this area doing? How does its activity depend on the observer's state of attention, what the person is trying to do as they're looking at words? How does it communicate with other parts of the brain? And how does its function develop? And how does it differ between skilled and struggling readers? Now, I don't have any collaborations with Teachers College yet. I'm still somewhat new here, but I would love to. Perhaps my skills in vision and eye tracking and brain imaging could be useful to ongoing projects at TC. Perhaps we could work together to extend this line of work to understand development of reading ability or individual differences, especially in those who have dyslexia or other disorders like that. So I look forward to meeting more of you at the after party. Thanks.
Well, unfortunately, our final speaker, who was going to do some closing remarks, is delayed. And so Dr. Mitchell, so hopefully he will come later and we may interrupt the party for him to make his remarks. We'll try that. But I just want to thank all of the Flash Talk presenters for doing such a fantastic job. And they all stuck to their 3 minutes or less, which is highly impressive. But I am just so amazed and honored to have such wonderful colleagues at Teachers College, as well as some new colleagues at Barnard. And so we really invite you now to, I will say now, but I have a few other things to let you know, to go out into the poster session and the networking session. How we have, so a couple of announcements before you get up and leave. So the way we have this organized is there are posters in the middle of the rotunda. And so please check those out. Those continue to show the range of research that is done at both institutions. It was so hard to say we can't have everyone come and do a lightning talk or a poster. So please do know that there's a lot more that is happening at both institutions. The other thing, and so what else we are doing, we have 5 tables that are scattered on the outskirts of the posters. We have 5 topic areas. They don't necessarily, we had to kind of pick our topic areas, so our apologies if they don't fit you perfectly, but we have a table for arts and humanities, for DEI, for health sciences, social sciences, and STEM. And so please go to one of those tables so you can find other people that have similar interests. And we encourage you to move tables throughout the event. And please talk to people that you don't know. That's obviously the goal here. And also what we have done is you'll see there's a QR code, and you're probably wondering, what do we have a QR code out there? That will link you to the program. So we have a short program, and we also have a program that will live on Columbia's website and our TC website and hopefully Barnard's website that will also have a list of all the attendees. And so we have listed all the faculty with their email addresses, their faculty websites, so that you can see more of the wealth of the expertise that is at both institutions. So let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say. So please also, I will invite those of you who are interested in contacting individuals at Teachers College. Obviously, you can email and contact the people, but if there's a particular area of research or there's another, please feel free to reach out to me as the Vice Dean for Research. You can email me at hammer@tc.columbia.edu. Really easy, and I would love to help connect you with others on our faculty as well. So thank you all for coming and making this such a wonderful event, and please enjoy the wine and cheese as well as your colleagues. So thank you so much.